What's up, everybody? My name's Dom Palombi. It's wonderful to have you guys here. Thank you for tuning in for the episode 3 of our DomCast series. I am joined by my good friend 8-Bit Music Theory, and we are going to be talking about some music and drum stuff today. If you like this video series, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get notified of other videos coming out. 8-Bit, what's going on, man? It's great to have you here. I appreciate you stopping by and taking some time to spend and hang out with us for a little bit.
It's my pleasure. Doing well, doing well. How are you?
I can't complain. Just another day at the office, as I always like to say. I mean, like, maybe not everybody else's office is a drum set, but I know at least I know at least you can relate with regards of what's ever going on in your life as a fellow musician.
Well, I mean, yeah, my office contains a drum set, so
See, you have an office. I have a basement that's covered up by soundproof carpets that is a drum set. But this drum set has stayed in the same place for like 16 years. I mean, like I have a totally different kit now. What kit do you have actually?
It's a DW. I cannot remember the model. It's been a couple of years, but it's nice. It's a good solid kit.
Hey, DWs get the job done. I know, like a lot of people actually think about the DW brand of drums as like the luxury models, but we also have to remember that every company out there has luxury models. Like I have a Gretsch broadcaster, a '90s broadcaster kit that I actually bought from a friend of mine, and
nice.
And it's like it's not like super vintage, but it's got this like really sick red shell with this I want to say is gunpowder rims. It's like super killing actually. We can talk about more of that. Enough about that biz. Well, I'm curious to know actually what got you into playing drums when you got like what started all of this madness.
That's let me try and think back. I started playing drums when I was 9 years old. Started taking drum lessons, and I remember my parents made me take piano lessons before that, and I hated it. And so I was like, I don't want to do this. And they said, if you're not going to take piano lessons, you have to take some kind of lessons. One of those types of things. And for whatever reason, I chose drums. And I don't know why that was attractive to me at the time. But yeah, just totally fell in love with it. Played all growing up. In high school, that was like the only thing I was good at was playing drums. Then when it came time to go to college, I was like, what can I do? What degree can I take where I can play a drum kit in the degree? And the only one is jazz studies. So I went there, and that I didn't really start thinking about having a career in music or music theory or anything like that until then. So that's what started it all.
So interestingly, you were like kind of just going with the flow and wondering if something was going to kind of come up from studying this instrument for so long along those lines. You didn't necessarily have like a goal in mind that was like I want to be doing this for the rest of my life, or you were just like maybe let's see if this works out or if this pans out.
Yeah, it was kind of, I know I love playing music, love playing in bands, that kind of thing. So and I hated having a job. So I was just running away from having a real job and running towards, music in some capacity. I had no idea what was going to happen.
What was your first like real job? Did you have a real job, or did you like have a job for a period of time that was like, I wanted to quit this so bad or something?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have Zellers in America, but I worked at a Zellers. They're kind of like if you took Target and made it worse in every conceivable way. That's a Zellers.
Wow.
And they closed down. They're out of business. Zellers don't exist anymore. And I got hired on as like, they had announced they were closing their store. They had another year left that they were going to stay open, and they needed employees because everyone was jumping ship. And so that was my first horrible job that I just hated and wanted to leave desperately.
Oh man, I'm sorry for you, dude. It's like especially in like the reality that we're in. Sometimes you have to take whatever gigs that you can get in order to just get by through life and all that sort of stuff.
Of course.
Were you working with that job like while you were still home with your folks, or were you living on your own at that point along those lines?
Yeah, I was still living at home. I had started university already, so it was not like I wasn't in like a desperate situation, but I needed money. My folks were very kind, letting me stay with them and everything like that. But yeah, definitely that was a very that job inspired me to take music a lot more seriously and work a lot harder than I had been at it. So.
And it's weird sometimes when you think about it. There's certain situations where you have to kind of do something to kind of take you down to ground zero, and it makes you open your eyes and realize you're like thinking, huh, man, I really do not want to do this anymore along those lines. Incoming, we got a Soul Bros raid. Oh, Snapola.
Oh, I love the Soul Bros.
I know they're Robbie's a dear friend of mine. Yo, everybody. We're going to interrupt this podcast real quick. Thank you so much for the raid, everybody. What's up, Vlad? What's up, Drekken? Soul Bros. We're doing a fun podcast series on my channel, and I have the wonderful 8-Bit Music Theory joining us. I hope Guab's had a great stream. I believe this is his birthday week. Actually, he's doing a whole bunch of streams celebrating his birthday. So that's
Happy
really
birthday.
awesome. So what's up, everybody? Wonderful to have you guys here. Yeah, neat. So you're doing your drum thing. You're finally deciding like, hey, this is what I'm cool with. When was like the moment that it clicked that like you could start making this like a career for you, or when was the moment in time where like your playing just got better, or that you noticed that like, boom, I can actually do this?
That's a really good question. I think so. School taught me a lot about, more than anything, I think teaches you the musician mentality, or at least the jazz musician mentality, where you have to have your whole life committed to this thing. You know what I mean? Like if you're just, practicing once a week in your garage or whatever, or jamming with friends, like you're not gonna get anywhere. Or whatever, you might be fun, but you're not gonna be a professional level jazz musician because it's so intense and so hard to build up that skill. So I learned a lot, and it was very inspiring having profs that I could watch, like how seriously they took things and how much work went into their craft and everything like that. So wasn't until like I was taking things seriously second year of school, third year of school, but between my third and fourth years was when I really thought, like, if I'm going to make a living off this and not have to work at Zellers anymore, I'm going to have to, Zellers was close by that point, but I was going to have to like really put in some sweat. And so I like had a whole schedule where I was practicing 6 hours every day, 6 hours or 6 days a week. And just like trying to grind, and so spent the whole summer doing that. Came in fourth year, first day, we had our placement auditions for different ensembles, and my prof came up to me and was like, man, you sound totally different. That, like, you sound way better than you did when you left at the beginning of the summer. And so that felt really good. That was when I was like, okay, that's possible. It seemed like an unattainable thing to be a professional musician, but then having that little taste of, and not that I was professional level, I still wouldn't necessarily consider myself like a professional level drummer, but having that experience of, if you put in the work for enough time, you'll get somewhere, you will improve. And it's just about attacking it smartly and just putting in your hours. And then, so, after school, I had big dreams of becoming a professional drummer, and moved out to Montreal, which was like one of the two big cities in Canada where you can make a living as a musician. And, played in lots of bands, did that whole thing. And then that's where I started my YouTube channel. And then my focus kind of shifted, where I'm like, playing in bands and stuff is great. Being a musician is great. That would, that's still, I still consider myself a musician, but what I'm doing now is much more like to my taste, and takes advantage of my particular skill set a lot better, I think. But still, just having that mentality of like, you need to put in an insane amount of time and work to make anything worthwhile in a creative field. That I found extremely helpful moving into the YouTube space, where right from the get-go, I was really taking it seriously and really trying to put in put in the hours.
It goes to show that like if you're willing to invest in long term, just even in time in general, it goes that you're if as long as you continue to put in the work, it's going to hopefully reap those rewards in the end. I know at least for me, playing drums for so long, it's funny. I find it for me similar alongside of you where I was content with doing anything drumming related. To be quite honest, I didn't have
Right.
expectations that I was going to be like a full-time Twitch streamer at the moment, or I always wanted to perform and play with other people in ensembles in New York City, Philadelphia. It's like I would take any gig that I can get, whether it was like a wedding band gig or a jazz gig, or even if the pay was kind of not great either, I'd do it because any gig was kind of a learning experience along those lines. So it's cool to hear your side of the story from where you started, at least because it goes to show not everybody's going to have similar outcomes and that sort of stuff. Yeah, the exposure bucks. Yeah, everybody knows about the exposure bucks. Oh yeah, why don't you play this gig for like 100 exposure bucks, man? You'll make it in exposure no time.
Yeah.
But that's actually really neat. I was actually curious, how is like I don't know exactly what the music scene is like in Montreal. I mean, I don't know how often you're still playing there nowadays along those lines.
Oh, I moved back since then. It's been a few years since then. I've moved back to my hometown of Winnipeg, Manitoba. But Montreal, yeah, it was a really interesting experience because Winnipeg, there was a very definite ceiling where you could there were people, there were professional musicians who lived in Winnipeg, but there was like two of every instrument, kind of, So it was like if you wanted to be a professional drummer in Winnipeg, you had to kill one of the other two drummers in Winnipeg, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you know a guy. I know a guy. I have I have a few Italian friends that can take care of that business for you if you're looking to get more work.
Yeah, exactly. But Montreal was a lot, bigger, a lot more, a lot. It seemed like there were a lot more different music scenes, all kind of in the same city where I played, and same thing. I just said yes to everything. I tried to get my feet in as many doors as I could, and so you played in like a soul, hip hop, R&B kind of band with the singer songwriter, and got to meet a lot of people in that scene, and then I also played in this punk band, and got to see like, oh, there's a huge whole different punk scene that doesn't mix with this other scene, and there's just tons of stuff going on. So that was very exciting. But then, it's also wherever you are, it's going to be competitive. Either you're competing for a small amount of slots against a small number of people, or you're competing for a larger number of slots against way more people who are, better. So it's tough no matter where you are.
I was about to say, yeah, you're going to find like all sorts of stuff regardless of kind of where you go. I like to think there's a scene based off of like, every city. Maybe it's not going to be as prominent as others. And, one of these days I do want to travel up to Montreal and like experience the music scene. Potentially we can hang out, make a hangout of it or whatnot. That would be fun.
It's a cool city.
I bet it is. I bet it is, man. I've never had the chance to go there, but I would believe at least it's thriving. At least, okay, so you have a solid shot if there's two of every musician available. At least half of the people there are going to call you for gigs as long as you sound good.
Right, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
What was the turning point? So, like, you're trying to get out there and get this gigging life going and all that sort of stuff. But now it's like, okay, when did the theory stuff started to kick in for you? Did you like have a knack for music theory while you were studying in school? Was it something that like kind of just came out of nowhere or whatnot?
It's interesting to look in retrospect. And I'm sure everyone can do this to some degree. When you're in the moment, living your life, you don't necessarily notice things about yourself or about your situation that looking back you can say, oh yeah, pick up on things. So even like, as a kid playing bands and whatever, being in band in high school and stuff like that, I always found music theory interesting. I never considered myself like a theory head or anything, but just I never had that.
Uh-oh. May have lost him for a minute. Uh-oh. Hold on, chat. We'll be back in a short second. Hopefully, oh snap, we lost him.
Did I drop out there?
Yes, we lost you for a second. I don't know why.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. Let me. I'll re-ask the question. For that sense. When was it the turning point for you when the theory stuff started to click, or when was it like, man, I asked the question. I asked the question way better before you cut out. When was it? When was the theory like a turning point for you when you started to get into this whole, video game stuff, or was it along the lines of you always enjoyed theory while you were in school, along those lines?
Yeah, I always enjoyed theory. It's funny to look back at, even in my first year of university, I didn't know anything. Like, even though I enjoyed it and I always found music theory interesting. Yeah, looking back at my first year, I remember hearing someone say like, "Oh yeah, this whole section's just diatonic," and being feeling too dumb to ask like, "What's diatonic mean?" I didn't even know. And then so it happened pretty fast. But in school, you're surrounded by that stuff. Had a couple really good like theory classes and composition classes and stuff that really sparked an interest. And so then I kind of started dabbling in writing music and thinking about music theory more, stuff like that. And it wasn't until I moved to Montreal and was trying to play music there that I had enough free time on my hands that because I always loved YouTube too, like watching analytical videos on YouTube. Not that there wasn't much about music when I started, at least. It was a lot of film analysis, like anime analysis, video game analysis, of course, is huge. So I always loved watching that stuff, and I had this kind of interest in music theory. I like to read books about it and things like that, but I didn't consider myself like a theory guy or anything. And so I just decided to like make a YouTube video just for fun, as kind of like, if no one's going to make this kind of video analyzing music that I want to analyze or want to talk about, then I'll do it myself. And then started making my first video and realized like, oh, this is the thing for me. This is so much fun. And so yeah, it took a while. It took a long time to kind of conceive of myself as like a music theory guy, because even after I started making videos and they started getting a following, and people would write like that they found my thoughts insightful, I'm like, I didn't go to school for music theory. I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a real guy. I don't actually know anything. I'm just spitting my opinions out into the void.
No, you're just like, I learned all this on the ropes, and I mean,
Yeah.
you could technically say you're a theory guy. You could have been like holding your own cover, man. You could just be oh yeah, I know all this stuff about. No.
Yeah, well, yeah, but now at this point, if you're making a living talking about music theory, I think you can consider yourself a theory guy. So I've gotten over that.
No, I think that's a really neat point. I've always been curious because I've seen a lot of your videos, and it's always like you go so in depth with regards to some of the content you're going through. I think I remember watching one of your Halo videos, or something along the lines. I forget which one specifically. But not only are you like kind of you're kind of opening the eyes and ears to people that maybe don't have an understanding for music, but that are like have that nostalgic love for the video games and how the music and everything kind of ties it all together. Have you ever thought about like, what kind of makes the glue of a video game because of the music, or do you think there are video games out there that could like thrive without the music in general? Because I personally think, the music is everything.
Yeah, the music is a huge part of it. That's a really good question. I wonder, could you make... I mean, there are definitely video games that don't have music that are still... like, if you think of, like, I don't know, Snake or like those old school... Did Snake have music?
I'm trying to remember. It's probably like... if you're talking like the old... it was probably on computer or something.
I can't hear you.
Check 1 2 1 2.
Okay,
Sorry.
I got you.
I gotta press the button. I think Snake was like, if I recall, Snake was at least on computer for a long period of time. Maybe that wasn't one. Pong technically, I guess, didn't have music,
Okay, yeah.
if I recall
But
correctly
even like
too.
Pac-Man, Tetris, like really, really early games, the music makes up a huge part of the experience, you know. So I would tend to say that the music is really important. But I don't know. Maybe it depends. Maybe it depends on the type of game, type of person. Because there are games that I play where I, listen to a podcast and mute the game, and I'm ashamed to admit it. But
I
I
feel
don't listen to.
Yeah, I totally feel that. I even think sometimes too, we sometimes can get carried away based on the game, and we forget like. So there, I mean, like I remember playing Tetris 99, the battle royale version of Tetris,
Mm,
and when like things get more intense, the further and further you progress in the game, the music gets faster along
right.
those lines. So it's like it's always crazy, but it's interesting. Oh snap, we got Doug Perry and Carlos hanging out. What's up, fellas? Good to see you guys.
Hey.
Fake
Oh.
YouTuber. He mutes game soundtracks.
Yeah, I'm fake. You.
That's great.
Not
man.
all of them.
Not all of them. Talk to me a little bit about like I'm actually curious to know your insight with regards of like has the theory stuff that you've been doing on YouTube now has inspired you in a different way to approach playing drums, or specifically has sometimes been like has that been like two different things a lot of the times?
It's been a little bit.
Did we lose him again? Dag nabbit. Why are we losing him again? Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing well. It's wonderful to have you guys here. I appreciate y'all deciding to hang out with us. Oops.
Did
He's
I
just.
drop out again?
Yes, you did. Apparently, you're thinking too hard, man.
Sorry. I'm thinking. Yeah. When I started making YouTube videos, I really wanted to like pour my whole life into it and try and make it a career. Once I realized how much fun it was, so I kind of took a break from drumming, especially once it started taking off more. Um, and then after a while, realized like I really miss playing the drums. So it's been kind of a back and forth thing where, um, I kind of took a break, and especially when you leave music school, you're going so hard for 4 straight years that I think it's natural to kind of want to take a break anyway. um, but then I moved back to my hometown, Winnipeg, and got a place and got my drums set up and started practicing more, getting back into it, playing a little bit, and really enjoying it. And I definitely have found that like spending the time to focus on music in an analytical way. As a drummer, I think I would love to hear your thoughts on this too. Actually, people kind of have this conception that as a drummer you shouldn't or you don't need to know music theory per se,
Mm.
but I think it matters so much as a drummer to be able to hear with clarity everything that's going on with the group you're playing with, because you are so foundational to the sound, and you have to interact with every other element of the band in varying ways. So I found it a lot easier to play drums even after coming out of a little break, having better ears, having more of a conception of how music works, how songs work, how they're put together, just from analyzing tunes for tune after tune after tune for months and months and months.
Yeah, I feel that. For me, I know like at least tracing back. So I graduated from Rutgers University for my jazz performance degree in 2016. And one of my absolute mentors, Victor Lewis. For any of the drummers that do not know of this guy, you should stop everything you're doing and go look him up, because he's an absolute jazz legend. He is not only a fantastic drummer, but he's a great composer. He's written numerous amounts of tunes and albums at this point that so many people know his music, and he's one of those perfect examples of like he's a musician too. There's
Mm,
always the joke of, oh, there's 3 musicians and a drummer in a band,
right,
or
right,
along
yeah.
those lines. And I've learned a lot, at least through my first couple years of school, of thinking about, how to approach playing drums in a more musical fashion, along those lines too, and having a good theory sense. I actually I remember going back, I struggled hard music theory wasn't too bad. I struggled a little bit with like knowing chords and having to read sheet music a lot of the time. So I had to work my way up, getting through rudimentary classes during school. But then once like everything kind of clicked, even like not even talking about like, jazz theory. I consider jazz theory, it's almost a whole nother perspective at this point. 'Cause
Yeah, kind
that
of.
stuff can get like so complex. And that alone, at least when you have an understanding of like how to hear a bass, how to hear where the bass player is going with roots, or understanding passing tones with chords, or at least when you're reading a lead sheet, how you can see the chords kind of progress and hear those chords as they go by, at least gives you a better sense of like understanding what you're playing or what's happening when you're going when things are going on around you.
Yeah.
That's where I think a drummer, or excels better, because you actually give yourself more information to give you a better chance to do a better job performing along those
Of course.
lines.
Yeah.
Have you ever like had a moment whenever you're playing with like a band or something where you picture the chords like kind of going in your brain? Or are you that like wired sometimes when you're in the zone, or has that never been a thing, or is that am I?
I'm more of a, I don't know. I'm not a very visual person, I don't think. I definitely, it was a big shift to be able to follow along, cuz I feel like drummers especially can get by on instinct a lot more than other instrumentalists,
Right.
So like you're playing with a soloist, say playing some jazz, and they're maybe doing something that's ramping up the intensity of the solo, and you feel that and you react to it, but it's a vague interaction almost. Whereas, working on your ears or on my ears, and really knowing like, okay, this is the form of this tune, this chord is this, being able to hear all that stuff, playing with people, it's like, it's not just that, oh, he's turning up the heat a little bit. It's like, oh, he's doing this kind of polyrhythm, or oh, he's implying like some outside harmony. You can make a more informed choice about how to react to that if you can hear that. And I mean, like hearing that stuff on the fly is a totally different thing than sitting down and analyzing a piece of music. But
Yeah,
it helps.
it's even thinking about like if you understand how to speak the language, because so many people talk about music in different ways as a language, and I try to actually tell a lot of people that on my stream a lot of the time that don't understand. If you can understand a paradiddle, let's say, a paradiddle being one small word of our whole dictionary of drumming. And you have so many words that you can utilize that are different patterns or different concepts and ideas of polyrhythms or different field changes along those lines.
Right.
It's just like if you can have a better sense along those lines of like getting a better judgment on what the soloist or the saxophone player, let's say, is implying, they are giving you at least a better chance of more information to give you something else to work with along those lines.
Yeah, of course.
Have you done a jazz gig in a while? Or I mean, like, I guess now because of the circumstances we're in, I probably guess you probably haven't played a gig in a while.
Yeah. Yeah, when was the last gig I played? It's definitely been a while. I started and it's nice having this other career path. You lose that drive of like, I need to be getting gigs, I need to be taking every gig I'm offered, which has been nice because I've been able to turn down gigs that sounded horrible. But it's also like I just do a lot less of it, which is kind of a shame. But I did a not a jazz gig, but I did a Fleetwood Mac cover band gig a few months ago before all this pandemic stuff in the winter, which was pretty fun.
I remember you telling me about playing with that band. That band always. I have to check out more Fleetwood Mac stuff. Actually, I've heard the name before.
I didn't really check them out until again offered this thing, but they're cool. Some good songs.
Heck yeah, man. That's awesome. Fleetwood Mac cover band. I mean, hey, I'm down. we could do whatever. Now, out of curiosity, we may change a little bit, but I bet we can always kind of curate drumming back into what we're talking about.
Sure.
What was the first video game that kind of started your whole vision towards getting into this whole video game music scene? What was the starting point for you?
That's a really good question. I've always been a big Nintendo fanboy. Wind Waker was like my first game that I owned myself, and that was a big impression. That made a big impression on me, and the music too. Like I remember even like as a kid being in love with that music. So that probably is what sparked the like general video game music love. That and I remember like years before starting my channel, I transcribed all of the whole soundtrack to the first Sonic game, and was thinking like, oh, it'd be cool to make a blog about this or something, and then I never did. And that idea, I think, is what kind of percolated for a couple years until I realized like, oh, I should try this YouTube thing. So so those two games are what come to mind first.
I feel that, man. Let me just bring your levels up a little bit. Chat's saying you're just
sure.
a tad quiet. Do let me know, chat, if it does sound a little bit better. Here's my voice a little bit. Check 1 2 1 2. Give me a little bit of your thing. Yeah, I'm pumping the master. Go ahead. Ape.
How do I sound?
Better, worse, otherwise? I hope I hope that's better. Along that signs. All right, cool. Can still go up even more. All right.
Ooh. All right.
I'll bring
crank it.
I'll crank that master dough. Check. Good thing that I have a friend of mine that's going to be editing all of this, so we don't have to worry. We're doing
cut
it
out all the chaff.
We're doing it live, chat. We're doing it live. You have me maxed out. Okay. Sorry about that. I know, like, with my wireless headset mic I'm using today, it can definitely get, I can definitely get louder if I just move it closer. Let me remind me. You were talking about Wind Waker, a little bit of Sonic. You transcribed Sonic. You transcribed Sonic even before you started the YouTube channel, huh? Oh, did we lose him? What's going on here? Oh my God.
Man, I'm sorry about all these issues.
Bruh.
I could hear you, but I was frozen.
That is odd. We didn't have this problem yesterday.
Yeah, right?
I find
weird.
it
okay, well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's one of those things where looking back, I realized it's like looking back I can see, oh yeah, I was a big theory nerd. I didn't realize it at the time, but like I did transcribe the whole Sonic 1 soundtrack for no reason. Just for fun. So that's definitely been a part of my life, part of my brain that I just didn't think about much until I started making videos.
I think that's the best reason, though. You do it for no reason, and that doesn't necessarily make you think about it like, oh, I have to do this now, along those lines.
Right.
Or like you're not in a mindset where it's like, until like, let's say, yeah, once you made your YouTube channel and things started to really come along for you, before then you were just doing it because of like, hey, I think this is cool and I enjoy this, right?
Yeah, which is huge. Like I feel super lucky even just to live now. Like 10 years ago I wouldn't be able to do this, or I wouldn't, at least not exactly the same way, so I feel super lucky to be able to take my hobby and interests and make a living out of it.
Do you think like or like, I guess, so you've been doing this now for, you say 10 years, right?
YouTube I've been doing
YouTube
for
how long?
That's a good question. I guess 4 years.
4 years? Okay. I was curious to actually know, like, how early did you get onto the YouTube train before, like, I guess people were really starting to milk YouTube for what it is? Because I remember watching YouTube when it first, came on. People were watching videos, and posting videos was the cool thing back then. If you had a camera, you actually, could, upload an SD card using Windows Movie Maker and then post a video along those lines. Did
Sorry,
you
go ahead.
did you have like the same kind of thought process or that same inspiration when that kind of kicked in? Like, oh man, I got a camera now, I can start making videos.
No, I was always really into YouTube since like 2007. I remember discovering it and thinking it was so interesting, and so I was always really into it as a audience member, I guess, as a way to entertain myself. But never thought, like, I'm so not the kind of person to like post about myself on social media or do anything like that. So I never would have thought like I should make something and put it on YouTube. Um, and it's been really interesting to see trends change over the years, because like when it started and when people started being able to make a living making YouTube videos, the mindset was make the shortest thing possible. People have no attention span. If your video is over 4 minutes, no one's going to watch it. So the people who were making a living were, making like 15-second long skits and things like that. And that was a really interesting, challenge to have to work in those restrictions. But then to see things evolve in a way where not only do people have a longer attention span than 20 seconds, they have a way longer attention span than anybody thought was possible. Like, people listen to 3-hour long podcasts, people watch 5-hour gameplay videos or whatever. Like, so to see that kind of blow up, and then now it's like if your video is less than 10 minutes, you're throwing away money. You know what I mean? Like, it's totally flipped. So that change kind of inspired me a little bit, where I like to put together a video, take my time and talk about things. So
Do you? I actually am curious. I don't know if you ever checked, like, a lot of the times of some of your videos. Have some videos been over 10 minutes long, or do you even, like, at this point, do you have even what am I trying to say? Are you with the trend nowadays of trying to keep your videos like under 5 minutes, or you're like, screw that, I have enough stuff I need to say. People are gonna listen to it, they're gonna like it, or that kind of vibe.
Well, I'm more on that side of it. I haven't had a video under 10 minutes since like my very first videos. It's always been up there. But I'm also not the type. There's a whole other I don't know if you call it a genre, a whole other type of YouTube video that's like half an hour, and it's a very leisurely stroll through a topic, which is great. I like listening to that stuff. But I also get annoyed when people don't get to the point. If like your video should be as short as it can possibly be, but have enough content that you couldn't have the same video be shorter than like 15 minutes. That's my ideal. Is like a 15-minute video that's just jam packed with info. So I've been getting better at that, I think. More concise.
Can you turn down your microphone just a little bit? I'm hearing some crackling on my end. Chat's kind of saying your mic's cracking.
Sorry. How's this? How do I sound?
It's still cracking a little bit. Sorry about that. It isn't clipping.
I'll
okay.
Turn it way down. How's this?
If anything, I'll boost you up in the call.
Did I freeze again?
No. Oh, I don't think
okay,
so.
Here.
I think you're good.
Okay.
Sorry about the technical difficulties, chat. I appreciate you guys bearing with us. I'll definitely need to find out some more technical ways to make this a little bit easier. I hope that's better. It's good to have you all here, though, chat. I appreciate it. Might be network issues.
Can't hear you. Are you
Sorry,
pressing the button?
I didn't press the button. I'm not pressing the button. I was talking to chat. That's probably why.
Okay.
Also, VGM Collective, thanks for the raid, man. I appreciate that. Sample rate problems? Okay, good to know. Anyways, man, it's funny for me. I'm still working on my YouTube game. It's like now with regards of where things have kind of transpired in my life now since I've
Sorry about that.
Do we need to have a counter on my stream of how many times 8-Bit Music Theory is disconnecting from the call? No, you're good. You're good. I actually was curious. So, like, I know for me, now since I've been on Twitch and quote-unquote, seriously doing, internet stuff, you could say I'm more of a streamer than a content creator per se. I'm still trying to get a knack for all of this YouTube stuff and whatnot. And it's funny having so many friends that are like, excelling at the YouTube levels of their careers at this point. Would you find it interesting if there was like a turning point where, okay, if you couldn't do YouTube anymore, what would you consider doing? Would it still be something musically related along those lines? Something video game related if YouTube quote unquote didn't exist?
It would definitely have to be music related. That's like my number one thing. That's a good question. I've definitely I get a lot of um older individuals, my grandparents and my parents' friends and people like that. When they find out what I do, they're like, okay, and I always get asked like, oh, so are you going to be like a prof at a university? Like that's their like, oh, this must be a stepping stone to become a prof. Which to me, I'm like, I would way rather be doing YouTube than be a professor. Um, but that's something that you know, because I love talking about music theory and analyzing music. So any other venue that I could use to do that would be top of my list probably. Um, Other than that, yeah, I mean, playing music, writing music, maybe trying to write for games or something and be involved in game production would be cool. I mean, I haven't given it too much thought to be honest,
I
but
just had a weird thought. What if there was a college that existed that would be the video game music college? And something, if there was a job that like that outside of YouTube that existed, would that be something that of interest to you? Or maybe I'm preaching to the choir for some of the people in chat that are here. If something like that existed, where people could literally study, and go into concrete depth of the origin of video game music, the composers, and all that sort of stuff, you know, it'd be actually a course that exists. I mean, I'm curious to know your thoughts behind this.
that would be very cool. It's exciting to see music or video game music get more slowly but surely getting more recognition, more like I feel like there's still a pretty big divide between like if you're at a music school, even between like classical music and jazz music, those faculties are always divided. And then in each faculty, it's like, yeah, like in the jazz faculty, there, at least at my school, there was this attitude of like, jazz is amazing. This is like the highest form of art. And if you're interested in, any other kind of music, that's cool, but it's not like that cool. So like
Yeah, I feel that.
talking to if you brought up video game music with a prof at my school, it'd probably be like, okay, why are you talking to me about this?
It,
Um,
I guess it's like the scenario too of like when you go at a jazz program, or you're getting taught by people that have been through a whole different era than you, along those
yeah,
lines, and they're trying to kind of imply, okay, this is what came before us, these are the traditions that you have to learn. And I'm usually a big advocate when it comes to like understanding the traditions that came before us, because that's how
of
we
course.
learn. That's the
Hmm.
best way that we can take in knowledge and information. But I find it interesting too that like not only that you bring it up, but I feel like there's so many people nowadays that the video game music scene is kind of becoming its own turning point,
Hmm.
along those lines. So where maybe we are starting to like crack some history in the books that could be the new mainstream of the next century, if you will, along those
I
lines.
hope so. Well, the thing that really excites me is I see a lot of parallels between the current video game music scene, which is it's been around for a while, but it's still in its infancy, I would say, or like early stages at least. But there's a lot of parallels with the early jazz scene as far as if you think about like Tin Pan Alley tunes and how the kind of early jazz was all jazz musicians interpreting these show tunes and giving people a melody that they were very familiar with, that they've heard people sing in shows, and then using that as a jumping off point to explore improvisation and explore more advanced harmony and explore all these different musical venues. I see a lot of parallels between that and video game music today, where there's a huge audience of people who grew up playing video games. The music is very nostalgic. They know all the melodies. They've heard the Mario theme a million times because it just plays over and over while you're playing Mario, and so they can connect with that super easily. And so you get musicians like Insane in the Rain and Super Soul Bros and Drum Ultima and VGM Collective and everyone else in the chat putting forward thought-provoking and serious music that is very, very accessible compared to an equivalently intense original jazz piece or whatever, because people can relate to that melody and relate to that music so strongly. So I have huge hopes for the scene, and it's really exciting to be a part of it in some capacity. And I hope that we can get together at MagFest and MagWest and all these other conventions soon, and that this pandemic stuff doesn't delay that happening too much, because that's always extremely exciting to be in these places with these fans.
I think so too. Like with regards of like where things are going nowadays, like again, I actually would have never really have started streaming or have gotten into this whole video game music scene if it hadn't been going to a gaming convention with friends for fun.
Right.
It's weird how much, like for me at least in that respect, of something like that kick-started, everything that is kind of developing for a new hopeful sign of a career, at least in my eyes. I know, like, for you with your music theory thing, you didn't expect to land into that when you were in school, or at least, you didn't. I get it was always something that happens to the back of your eye. I guess the funny thing that it'd be interesting we dug into a little bit more of how much the internet has become a driving force. I feel like even in these times today, with regards of being, restricted to going to social gathering, social distancing, doing the things necessary in order for us to maintain our health, along those lines. How has the internet influenced you in many ways than none? Just as not only a source of entertainment, but how has that kind of spruced, what seemed to be the natural beginning for you along those lines?
Yeah, it's I mean, of course, the internet without all these current developments, not even just the internet, but like Patreon and YouTube and these very specific platforms that have come up relatively recently. It just totally changes how it's completely changed what's possible, and I think it's taken people longer to catch up to what's possible with the current technology than like the technology is changing faster than people can conceive of it, at large. Like you were talking about a video game music university or something. There would be a lot that would be really cool about that, getting to stand in a room physically with students and talk about music like that. But just the fact that I can put basically a music theory lecture together and have it be seen by 50,000 people, like you could never sell out an arena for a music theory talk, you know what I mean? But or whatever.
I mean, you could totally imagine it though, man.
I mean, it's actually very overwhelming to think about, because it just looks like a number, it's just a number on a screen. It's like, oh, that's good. That number is very high. That's good. Awesome. But when you think about it in terms of like actual people, that is crazy.
I mean, hey, I'm just like kind of spitting balls at this point with regards to like, there's so much that we don't really know what is in the potential with regards of, the future at this point. And I think the biggest thing that always gets me excited, like, it's that nostalgia factor, right? It's kind of what, curated me into this whole scene, if you will. Like, I wouldn't ever have met you. I would have never met the Soul Bros, Insane in the Rain, Drum Ultima, the J Music Band, if it hadn't been for this whole video game thing. If there wasn't video games, would you kind of be? Do you see yourself doing something else if video games wasn't a thing?
Well, when I started, before I made my first video, actually, I was waffling between making like a video game music analysis and talking about Beatles tunes, because I love the Beatles. I'm a big Beatles nerd, big Beach Boys nerd. and I love that kind of old 60s rock and pop kind of thing. So that was going to be, these were these two competing interests. And I saw online, like, you know, guys like Smooth McGroove, people, you know, and Insane in the Rain, actually, like people who, um, you know, were doing video game music related content and getting big followings. And I was thinking, like, that's so cool. That's such a cool, like, new thing. People have analyzed the Beatles to death. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I would be adding anything new. So that's what made me kind of go in the video game direction. But if I didn't have video games, like, I would definitely just be doing this kind of stuff, talking about old music that I like.
I guess that's the funny thing. It forces you to make you think about, you know, your own niche in a different way, along those lines, and how you can fit into the melting pot that is, you know, YouTube, or that is the internet of, like, theoretists or stuff like that. Are there other people that you know on the channel or on YouTube in general that do similar stuff like you at this point, or do you feel like you're one of your only kind that's doing content like yours?
As far as talking about video game music specifically, I don't know if there's a lot out there. I know there's this channel Scruffy that I think is more geared toward, like, sound design in video games, but it's very cool. There's some cool videos. And then there's definitely more music theory related stuff, you know, than there was when I started, or at least I've seen more of it now. You know, like, this guy David Bennett Piano, I think is his channel name. He talks about, like, the Beatles and tunes like that, in a very similar style to, like, you know, like having the sheet music on screen and saying, like, have an episode on why does this chord feel this way? Why do they change keys to, you know, in this way? There are definitely channels that are cool like that. But I think a lot more of them are geared towards, yeah, like popular music or 60s rock than like video game stuff.
Has any of this stuff, like, kind of made you think about, like, what could be next for you in your career outside of doing more videos? Have you thought about, like, doing your own arrangements or trying to write your own music to a certain degree? Or I'm curious to know what potentially may be next for 8-Bit Music Theory, for the YouTube channel, or for you as an artist, potentially along those lines.
I've been thinking about that. I'm naturally a very lazy person, so I have to fight that instinct in myself a lot. But
Dagnabbit.
sorry,
You're good.
when did I drop out?
You were naturally a lazy person, you were saying. But I'm also a naturally lazy person too. It's weird how priorities work. Go ahead.
I'm so lazy that I'm done with this interview. No, but as I was saying, at the beginning of this year, end of last year, I really started thinking about, like, you know, I can't just keep. Not that I'm not in a great place right now with the channel, and I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, but I feel like once you kind of start sitting on your hands and going, this is fine, then that's almost the end. So I'm thinking about how I can push myself, and I plan to do some recording this year. I have some arrangements that I've finished up of video game music, that I am excited to you know, play and record and show people. But with the pandemic stuff, it's been hard to get musicians in a room to record stuff. So hopefully that, you know, there's a lot of year left, so hopefully before the end of the year that's out, and that'll be good, but we'll see.
Yeah, I feel that too. It's especially, like, with nowadays, so many people have to do, like, remote recordings and stuff like that. Would you even try to consider at least getting, like, people together remotely online to get a project? But that may also be, like, you know, a lot on yourself based on, you know, how much work you're already doing at home, per se.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That is the other thing, is it does take a long time to make these videos. So having to work around that, or try and balance, like, you know, do I take time off of making a video to work on this project that I don't know if it will work out or be good, or, you know, that's kind of a challenge too. But Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about doing remote stuff and putting some ideas, thinking about things. I think about things a lot before I actually act on them. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't want to make any
No,
predictions that
no
I can't keep.
spoilers here, man. I
Yeah, no
totally
spoilers.
respect. I totally respect. You're trying to. Hey, I have content coming up, and I want to. You keep people on the edge of their seats along those lines.
Oh,
How often are you putting out videos nowadays? Are you doing it like at least once a week, or something? Or
no, I've been pushing out 2 a month. I used to be able to get out 3 every 2 months about that. Because I do it all myself and it does take a long time. But this last, I guess since March, I've had 3 months in a row where I've been putting out 2 a month, and I feel very good about that. I'm very
wow.
proud of myself.
So roughly it takes you about at least 2 weeks to let's say record, edit, and master and does the rendering take like a whole day too?
Yeah, well, I've learned to reserve a day to after I've rendered the video, I watch it and I reserve a whole day to go back in and fix the like 5 things that I missed, stupid mistakes, and re-upload it. So,
Has there
but
ever
yeah, it's like, sorry, go ahead.
Has there ever been like a video where you uploaded it, you've taken all that time, and then you notice one little mistake, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. And
And
I'm like I said, I'm a naturally lazy person, so there have been times where I've seen that and just hit upload anyway. I'm like, I don't care.
see,
You
chat,
guys deal with it.
there's Easter eggs. There's Easter eggs to his videos now. You guys can find some unique stuff.
Well, especially early on when you're like, I have 200 subscribers and that's great, and I'm very, happy to have this audience of people. But like, you don't expect that 100,000 people are gonna watch your video one day, and so you're like, oh, I forgot to take this little thing out. Oh well, and then cut to 3 years later, and it's like you have 1,000 comments and people being like, oh, you forgot to take this thing out. Yeah, I did.
That's actually really funny though. It's like,
Yeah.
whenever you have somebody watching, even like when I have anybody watching my streams regularly, they're not only focusing on me, they're always looking at what's happening around you, or, all the little minor details that maybe are peculiar things. I bet you have like moments in those videos where you find out like maybe you capture a gameplay footage or something, and then like something just flies by right across the screen,
Right.
and you like have you done stuff like that, or editing techniques where you completely milk, just that for
That's something I've been trying to get better at because I'm not a video editor by nature at all. That's something I had to learn from scratch, and so I've been trying to get better at like my early videos. You can really tell that I didn't understand that it matters what the video game footage on screen is. Like, I'll just capture myself playing some Sonic or whatever for 15 minutes and then throw it behind the video, and then all the comments are, I could not focus on what you were saying because you are so bad at Sonic the Hedgehog, like that kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, that matters. I have to like think about that. So, hopefully that's less of an issue now.
that's
Hopefully I've
actually
learned a little bit.
that's actually really funny. I guess like, did you have to play all the games that you made those videos for, or did you find like previous footage online in order to kind of like
It
get
depends on the game. Some games, especially if it's like a game I have played and own, and I try and capture all my own footage as much as possible. There have definitely been games where I listen to the music and want to talk about that, but I either like I'm not going to learn how to play Toho to make a Toho video. You know what I mean? Like I'm just
yeah.
not going to put in that amount of time.
No, it's
So,
no point. It's like
yeah,
if you're trying to get one particular moment in a 10-hour game, you're not going to like, play the game 7 hours in and be like, "Yes, here we are,"
totally. Yeah. But it's very easy to find someone who will record game footage for you. You know what I mean? Friends or people who online or whatever. People, do you mind if I run to the bathroom real quick?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Awesome.
Do it up,
I'll
buddy.
be right back.
This guy's got some dang good timing, I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, what'd I miss?
You missed nothing. I was doing my whole spiel of just getting everybody up to speed.
All right.
All right. And yo, Jason with the 3,000 bits. Holy bits, Batman. Dude, thank you so much for the support, brother. I really appreciate that. Um, Here's an interesting question. Do you ever see yourself doing something on Twitch anytime soon?
I don't know. I've thought about it a little bit, but I'm so removed from the culture of it that it feels like there's a lot that I would have to learn to be able to step in, you know.
It's a very
Yeah.
interesting. I guess like you could kind of say it's like a similar scene of itself, like with any platform that you work on. Because I don't know if you do anything outside of YouTube per se. If YouTube's been your thing for the 4 years you've been doing now, it's not so complicated, yeah.
Mm.
But it's also interesting because I think we've had this conversation before at like a convention where I was thinking, you could also go into depth a little bit on whether if it's like you're editing a video online or along the lines you could like do a Q&A whilst you're kind of getting in depth, so people that are in your community could actually get some insight on what potential videos may be coming. Something to think about. I don't know exactly
I
what else you would try to consider doing on stream.
I have done a few. I just started in the last couple months doing like a monthly transcription stream just for my highest tier of patrons to kind of like dip my toes into it, because I think that sounds like something that could be kind of fun. It's like transcribing music on stream and answering questions and things like that. But I was very self conscious about because streaming, that's such a different skill set from video making,
Right.
and I don't, But so I've done a couple of those for patrons, and they've been really fun. So who knows? Might branch out and do more of that
Have
in the
you
future. We'll see.
I'm curious actually to know a little bit more about Patreon in that respect. I've been planning on trying to start one myself. How has that I guess like, obviously it's financially helped you out in many ways than none to continue to make the content that you do. But what else has that opened some doors for you to like keep yourself more organized, or what were some things that you at least got out of that you set up for yourself when you made that account?
Yeah, it's actually been, I mean, like life-changingly huge. The majority of my income is Patreon, and it's very freeing in the sense of I don't have to worry about like my views that much on YouTube. If you're just making ad revenue, then I would approach things pretty differently. I would like I never take any sponsors or anything, and I don't put ads in the middle. I don't put ad breaks in the middle of my video just because I find that stuff super annoying as a viewer, and I would definitely make more money if I did that. But I don't have to do that stuff because I can make a living just off of Patreon, basically. So that's been super helpful, and it's also been very helpful because it gives you a deadline where every month you get you charge your patrons every month for whatever you put out. So I kind of think in terms of months, where like I have a certain amount that I need to get done this month if I want to get 2 videos out or whatever. um, and so that's very good for structuring my time, because like I said, my natural inclination is to be like, it's fine, I'll do that later. But then when you have, if I don't have this done by week 1, then I won't have this done by week 2, and then week 3 and week 4, and then I don't make any money this month. So that's been a good fire under my butt. Which that's it's I have nothing but good things to say. That's a great platform.
That's awesome, man. It's admiring to know that like you're really thinking about the content you're putting out to for your viewers, with regards to, some people that I guess like they're so accustomed to seeing ads, especially for, videos longer than 10 minutes along those times. I don't even run any ads on my stream, really. The only ads that
Mm.
people see are for people that aren't subbed. So I find it interesting that like you're really going the extra mile and putting the viewer in your mindset in the forefront first with regards to the content you're trying to make. When was it that point that like that fully clicked for you, that you realized like, okay, things are working now? Or I bet you did a bunch of trial and error when you were, at least like formulating ideas, trying different techniques. I bet you watched a bunch of other people's videos to get in other insight or learn some other techniques, that maybe things that you didn't know how to do beforehand.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's been huge. And that's that's something you learn in jazz school too, is like if you want to do this at a professional level, you have to steal from the greats. You have to transcribe these drummers and how they play, and then try and be able to impersonate them, and then you can kind of build your own style out of that. And so I took that mindset a little bit too, and it's still something that I should get better at. But taking other YouTubers that I like, um, even if they're not talking about music or whatever, and just trying to figure out like, what do I like about this? What can I take from this guy? What can I take from this guy? How certain people write, how certain people edit, things like that. Um, yeah. So I can't remember what your original question was actually.
It was just I was curious to know, like, it was another like turning point kind of thing. When did things like kind of click for you in your video YouTube phase with like, I'm making this for the viewers that are watching
Right.
instead of for me, right? Instead of making
Right.
the video for the satisfaction for yourself, because sometimes, you kind of are putting yourself first most of the time, I feel like, because,
Yeah.
you're your own judge. You always have to kind of critique yourself in order to
course.
like put out your best content or your best effort along those lines. So I'm
That's a really
curious.
good. That's a really good question. I don't know if I've thought about that specifically, but now, like thinking about it now, I think that's a mindset that you kind of get, that you kind of need to adopt as a drummer, if that makes sense. Like, as every member in the band should be thinking about the listener's experience of them playing, but the drummer specifically can like really ruin a song by not caring about that.
Dude, I know, man.
Yeah. So I wonder if that's been something that kind of got baked into me early on, because even from early on making videos, like the first video I made was just for me to see if it would be fun, and it was fun. But right early on, I got a pretty big, like relatively big following right from the first video. Like I didn't realize how crazy it was at the time, but I got like 2,000 views on the first video that I put out, which is crazy. And it wasn't until months later that I kind of realized, like, oh, that was really weird. I shouldn't have gotten that many views. But so it's pretty, like, within the first 5 videos that I made or so, you see comments that are like, oh, it's hard to follow along with the music that you're playing. If only you could have some kind of like playback bar that follows the notes on screen. You read that and you're like, oh yeah, why don't I have that? That's such a good idea. And so I think the YouTube format of like having people comment on your video as soon as you post it, it helps foster that kind of mentality too, where you can just, it's very visible. Like, these are the people watching my video. This is what they think. They don't hold back if they don't like something. So I kind of got into that mindset pretty early on, I think, of like, what's the experience of watching this video? Because if it was just for me, I would never actually put together a video, because the fun part to me is listening to the music, transcribing it. I love transcribing music.
And that's a 6 on the counter. Oh man.
Add one to the counter.
Chat, make this for the books. We're gonna have to have him back on at a later episode to recoup all of the lost.
Yeah.
No, it's totally cool, man. I think I can totally relate to. I think I've told you this story. At least for me, it's like the same perspective of when things are clicking as a drummer. Yeah, we can make or break a song per se, where it's like you have to kind of know when to play just enough for every kind of tune. I remember I was taking a jazz combo class, and this was like sophomore year. This fantastic trumpet player, Joe Magnarelli, was my combo teacher for that semester. The first note we play, the first thing we do, we play, and he's like, stop. He looks right at me, and he's like, Dom, what is the difference between 55 and 66? And I was just like, they're 11 apart or something along those lines. He's like, yeah, but what's the difference between 55 and 66? He was really talking about, the importance of feeling, getting a good feel on the ride cymbal. And, especially with that, if a drummer isn't happening, they're not going to, the band isn't going to be happening really
Of course.
along those lines. So, it's funny that you talk about when things are finally clicking for you, at least in the retrospect of like, this is the content, this is what the viewer can like take in, and if it's happening, cool. If it's not happening, you're going to hear other stuff regarding from those other people in the comments down below. But then people have good comments to say a lot of the time too.
Of course. And a lot of I have a great fan base. It sounds weird to call them a fan base, but the most music theory nerds are pedantic. That's just the way it is. So you get a lot of pedantic comments. Or I used to get more, actually. Now, like, the overwhelming majority of people are super, super nice. Yeah, I was going to say, if I was purely doing this for my own enjoyment, the actual, like, editing together the video part is, like, not that fun. That's the part that feels the most like work. The transcribing music, super fun. I love doing that. Analyzing it, super fun. I love doing that. Writing a script can be hard, but it's just, collecting your thoughts in that way is engaging. But the actual like production of putting it out to the people, the act of doing that kind of, for me, forces me into this mindset of like, how are people going to be experiencing this? Like,
right.
How can I make their experience better?
No, and that's like, even thinking of like, us as the musicians and playing for the music before ourselves. We always want to suit for ourselves for our own efforts and for our own sake. But at the same time too, the people that are sitting in the seats paying the money for us to play the music is like the biggest thing, and you need to think of them first to create the moment that they're going to understand and share. Especially for the people that are supporting you on Patreon, you need to kind of procure those same feelings when it comes to, putting out the next video could be on Hollow Knight, or it could be on, Undertale, or it could be on whatever game that you decide to do along those lines. So really, really fascinating stuff, man. Shall we take some questions from chat?
Sure, let's do it.
So, chat, like I said, if you guys haven't done so already, join our Discord page, and if you can, post your questions to the Ask Dom Palombi section. That is going to be the easiest way for me to see those questions. You guys can type a few of them in chat, but the best way will be for me to kind of check them out on Discord. And we got a nice, healthy amount of questions. This is awesome.
Ooh.
So our first question is from Mode Wondershot. For 8-Bit Music Theory and Dom, ever play a game that drew you in because of the music, or ever dislike a game because of the music? Or dislike it more along those lines. I'm gonna let you start this one off.
The first thing that comes to mind is I just picked up Deadly Premonition for the Switch recently, and I'm not far in at all, but the music is just hilarious in how I don't even want to say it's bad, because it seems like it's on purpose. Very weird. Like, there's like one happy tune that's like whistling, and it's like they steal half of the Super Mario Bros. Or Super Mario World main theme melody.
Oh wow.
So it's kind of a meme. I don't know if people have seen it, but so it'll have like one super like happy cheery tune, and then one like super dramatic, mystery, dissonant, intense tune, and it'll like just hard cut between those two pieces mid conversation, depending on like what someone's talking about. And so it's really jarring.
That's weird. That's like,
but it's so weird that it seems like it has to be intentional, because the whole game is weird. You know what I mean? So it's not that I haven't been enjoying that, but it's definitely taken me out of the experience.
it's funny for me, I guess, like nowadays I'm doing so much more work with regards of streaming and drumming, and then, content stuff. I haven't had whole lot of time for playing games. If anything, the few main games that I've been dabbling in has always been Mario Kart, Splatoon, Super Smash Brothers. Mario Kart is like kind of my normal go-to at this point. I mean, some of my chat, knows that I start off the stream with Mario Kart 64, because that's like a banger itself. It's like, the people, I forget who the composer was, unfortunately. You would probably know. I'm blanking off the top of my head.
I'm blanking too.
But the people that wrote all the Mario Kart music, even just for like all the different ones that exist, whether if it's 64, whether if it's Mario Kart 8 on the Switch, whether it's the Mario Kart DS, Mario Kart Double Dash. All of the tunes on there are just like bangers. I don't necessarily say that the music draw me to it. I knew it was the game and the aesthetic of the game first that drew me to it, but the music I didn't necessarily start to get really into until I got deep into the game along those lines. So like I know for me, it's so funny that I've been looking back, at least from whenever I've played a game, I never really necessarily thought about the music before until now. And sometimes a lot of people, I guess, think it's always that secondary thing. It's like the game first and then the music, because it's that background aesthetic that's adding all those sound effects that kind of just bring it to life. Even it's just kind of like what we were talking about earlier of how I feel like so important music is to curating the nostalgic aspects of the games, or the emotions that people feel when they're playing, Mario Party, for example, or Super Mario Baseball. I was just thinking of, if the game didn't have the music, it wouldn't just do it any justice. Was there a game that you disliked that because of the music? I'm trying to think if there's one that I disliked. It's hard for me to say though.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like, I'm big into Picross, and the Picross games on the Switch are great.
Never
and the
played.
music is
Never played
good
Pitcross.
too. Sorry?
I never played Pitcross, unfortunately.
Oh, it's like a puzzle game, and it's just super addictive. I'm super into it, but it's one of those where you're sitting and staring at a puzzle for like maybe 10 minutes on the big ones, and the music is fine, but it's like a maybe 90-second track just on loop. And I don't care what song it is. You can only listen to one song so many times in a row before you're like, stop. So yeah, there's certain games that you
I bet there
mute.
I bet there are some games where it's just like it gets so repetitive and you just want to like throw your controller at the TV and just, well, I mean, like, don't actually do that. So our next question we got here from Ryham512. What I like about 8-Bit's videos is he often makes interesting connections between musical elements and emotion. I was wondering if there's any resources he recommend for that kind of analysis, or if it just comes intuitively.
I think it probably is more intuitive, to be honest. I know, well, I will say there's a book called Songwriting Secrets of the Beatles by Dominic Pedler that I read twice through when I was in college, and it was a huge influence on the way I think about theory and the way I talk about music. So I would recommend that to anyone who's interested in my mode of expression. But a lot of what you kind of find with a lot of like very serious music theory publications and props and things like that is there's kind of an idea. I'll get closer to the mic. There's kind of an idea that music is not tied to any kind of emotional response, and if you get an emotional reaction to a piece, that's just your subjective experience. Like like Stravinsky was actually a big proponent of that idea that like music is just for music's sake, and it's the form, it's the structure and the beauty of just the notes that is what music is, and that's what I care about. And if you say, oh, this sounds sad or this sounds joyous, that's just your own thing. And I don't agree with that at all. I think it's kind of silly to look at music and say, oh yeah, everyone has an emotional response to music, and 99.9% of people will have the same emotional response to the same piece of music, especially if they're listening to it in the same context. But that's probably just like a subjective, totally random thing. Like, no, obviously not. So I don't know. I haven't read a ton of books that that talk about that at length. But I'm not a very academic person, to be honest. So
I'm in a similar boat, man, where it's like all of our own individual levels of education, or what we take in daily is in different doses, and what we prefer to take in a lot of those times too can really change from person to person. I even think it's interesting because, like, I think the nice part is with a lot of your content you put out, or at least from the content that I've seen, you're being intuitive, you're putting your own personal opinion. It's just one person's opinion. You're just,
Right.
one guy that has something cool he wants to share with, 200,000 other people or so. And, out of the one guy out of that 200,000 people, all the 200,000 people together are all individually going to have their own unique opinions based on the subject of matter, along the lines
Totally.
too. And that's just with music in general. So I feel like,
Sure.
it's nice to always see somebody else's insight, or get inside their brain a little bit, so you can kind of think, oh, this is how this person thinks, along those lines, with even if it's video game related or something along those lines. So Beaver-esque is asking, what do you feel is a game that is deceptively simple sounding, that has a deceptively simple sounding soundtrack, but is actually incredibly cleverly composed or has levels of complexity one may not expect, primarily for 8-bit music theory, but feel free to throw your thoughts in there, Dom.
That's a really good question.
That's a lot of words.
I just did a video on Chibi-Robo's soundtrack, the GameCube game from 10
Man,
years ago.
I
or
remember
longer,
playing
10
that
years ago.
game a lot. That's a throwback actually for me.
I was a huge fan of it as a kid, and I hadn't really heard anyone talk about it, especially not the music. And I didn't really remember the music well from playing it originally, but then a couple of years ago, for whatever reason, I either started playing it again, or maybe I just looked up the soundtrack. I can't even remember. Either I looked up the soundtrack and that inspired me to play it again, or I played it again and heard the music. But the music is crazy. It's like one of the weirdest soundtracks I've ever heard. There's tons of different genres represented. The style is very kind of like rambling and weird, and the guy jumps out of key in really weird ways very suddenly, and there's some tunes that are just like totally atonal and like super dissonant, crazy. And it's just super weird because the game is this bright, cheery, you're a little robot, you're scrubbing the floor, it was totally not what I would expect for that kind of game. So that was a very fun video to make, to really dive into that soundtrack.
I think that's what keeps it exciting, though, too, is like you're throwing all these curveballs and things that maybe like I wonder actually what was the composer's mindset kind of going into that when he was creating all of those tunes for that game in general, because like not only is Chibi scrubbing the floors and doing like maid like duties around the house, but you're also like having to jump through hoops. You're having to fly all around the building. Sometimes you fall down like, I don't know, 10 feet from the ceiling, and like he could like risk hurting himself or breaking himself. Because I'm trying to flash back from playing the game. I guess you could think of it as like a palette of sounds. So he has options for every little single thing that could potentially go wrong in the game too, outside of what could go right or what opportunity is that the player has control.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing to think about, because I know, especially like nowadays, soundtracks are all usually so dynamic that they'll have like, oh, when something bad happens or when you meet an enemy, the music will change to fit that. But you think about older games, like the original Mario Bros. Or something, Koji Kondo, I read an interview where he was talking about how he like wrote and rewrote the main theme like 100 times to try and get it to fit the action on screen perfectly. And I think like that would be so hard to have such a limited amount. Like you can write maybe a 60-second piece of music and it has to fit the vibe of what's on screen for this whole level, and I mean, he did it. Like that's a level of craftsmanship that blows my mind.
Yeah, I also agree. It's kind of the same thought process of milking one idea to infinity, or using a simple, even our drummer terms of like using bass drum, snare drum, and hi-hat, and how many ways and how many configurations can we just use a simple setup, whether if it's for different gigs, or what are those parameters that are going to challenge us as drummers to make our playing much better, or our creative way of thinking to a higher level in that respect. So it's like,
yeah, totally,
man, so much stuff we could always just like think about and stuff like that. I feel like we didn't talk enough drums. We probably should have gotten to more stuff. Notch is asking, question for both Dom and 8-Bit. If you could compose for any video game franchise, which one would you pick? Man, I guess I'll probably try to chime in first for this. I mean, like an easy, I hate to say an easy out would be Nintendo. You know,
Of
Nintendo
course.
makes great music. You know, it'd be great to write music for, you know, an indie game or something along those lines, or even just like a small snippet of a scene for a Nintendo game. Outside of that, I'm trying to think personally because, like, I feel like the newbie here with knowing my video game music knowledge, to compare to all my friends that are like so well rounded in this scene at this point. I could kind of see myself like writing for potentially, let's say, Portal 3 if Portal 3 was a thing,
Ooh,
or
interesting.
maybe another version of Halo if another version of Halo's coming
Oh
through.
man.
Because it's like, you know, yeah, I always still think back to the classic Halo opening thing with the jungle drums in 12/8,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
playing something like that, orchestra rock could kind of fit the bill for me. But I'm usually
Yeah.
open to any opportunity, really.
The problem with questions like this is, um, if it's like you want to pick a series that is really great music because that's what is inspiring to you, you know. But then something like Halo, it's like having to fill Marty O'Donnell's shoes, you know, if you
Yeah,
actually have to write a Halo soundtrack.
that's
That
very
would be
true. It's like
intense.
you have high expectations if you're going to take over somebody else's previous role, and so you're like, oh, we're not using this guy anymore. It's your time to take over the gig, and here's all the prerequisites to the music. Good luck.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Or yeah, yeah. My first thought would be like Mario Kart though. I love, especially Mario Kart 8 soundtrack is
Ditto,
so much
ditto.
fun.
It's
Yeah.
kind of just a cop out answer, but it's also like
Yeah,
the best answer as well, at least
right.
along those lines.
Yeah.
For both of you, so Call Tire's asking, for both of you, what video game soundtrack do you think is very underrated?
Ooh,
Hmm.
underrated. If you have one, jump in. I gotta think.
I'm also thinking too, so I'm trying to think what could be underrated.
Oh, you know what? I love the Snipper Clips soundtrack. That's one you don't hear anyone talk about, but that's a great
I don't
soundtrack.
know of that. So you may have to request this on a video game music stream for me one of these days. Oh, that's a 7.
Ah!
Oh boy.
I'm so annoyed. Okay,
Snipper clips you were talking about?
Snipper Clips. It's yeah. I mentioned one of the tunes in a video earlier this year talking about it was like one of those best of the decade, looking back at the 2010 to 2020. And I mentioned the Snipper Clips tune because it's just such a good soundtrack. It's so well because I've realized something about myself in the last 6 months where I really like music that's very goofy and doesn't take itself seriously, but then also is like very weird harmonically. That's like my favorite thing. And even with like you can say that about the Beatles, like super melodic, you know, very goofy. They you listen to them in studio recordings and things like they didn't take themselves seriously at all, and then they put together some of the like for the time some of the weirdest coolest music around. So I've realized that's my lane that I love. So Snipper Clips music is very much in that lane where it's very goofy and silly, but it's also super weird
You
and
may
awesome.
have to request some Snipper clips music later, man, because I've never heard to any of that stuff before. So I'd be curious to check that out and just try to play to it on the spot, see what happens. Man, I'm even trying to think if there's something that's underrated that I know of. I mean, like, my knowledge is, again, kind of limited, unfortunately, with regards of knowing video game music. What's the really funky? There's some I've heard some really good stuff at least from previous streams as of late, and I'm blanking. There's De Blob. There was some really funky tracks from this game called De
Okay.
Blob. That's really cool. Maybe I guess like if we're talking underrated, it could be like maybe not so well known, or along those lines. I'm forgetting about the boom, but it don't do. I'm forgetting about what the actual tune or what the actual game is that's from. Somebody in chat could probably help me out with that. Man, I'm I'm the worst with this question actually. I'm stumped. I'm stumped. Not
Somebody put
intentional.
on the spot.
Oh, Toe Jam and Earl. That's what I was talking about. Yeah, Toe Jam and Earl. I feel like could be a little underrated, but I could be wrong as well.
It's also tough to know. I feel like when you're in the video game music scene, there are certain games that are beloved by the people in the scene that like the wider world doesn't know anything about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's even like thinking of like so many people like Legend of Zelda stuff or Final
Sure.
Fantasy stuff or Super Mario. So it's like the main overarching, brands or the main overarching games have like this hierarchy of like that everybody knows all this stuff, and there's still like maybe so much stuff still to discover even nowadays. There's so much music out there. There's even stuff that we probably haven't even heard of before that's like,
Oh man, yeah, I'm sure.
yeah. But that's fascinating. Thanks for putting me on the spot there. I felt that's the first time I felt stumped on my own podcast. Sketch Rascal's asking for the both of you, what upcoming games, if anything, if any, Persona 5 reveals, etc., are you most looking forward to, either an OST and or gameplay at standpoint?
I'm excited to see. I've never played Demon Souls, but I'm a big fan of all those From games. So when they announced the Demon Souls remake, that was pretty exciting.
Oh, PlayStation 5 reveal. Sorry,
Yeah.
it looked like Persona 5 to me, unfortunately. PlayStation 5 reveals. Man,
Yeah.
I never got into the. I never got
Sorry,
into
go
any.
ahead.
No, you're good. I never got into any of those Soul games actually. I tried playing one of the Dark Souls originals once, and it was just hard. And I was, at least for me, I know a lot of the times with some games, I don't like to pour in time if it's gonna make me angry.
That's fair. That's
I don't know if you feel the same way.
Well, usually if a game is hard, I just give up. Like I'm not a gamer. I'm not good at video games. I mean, I play a lot of video games, but I'm not good at playing them usually. Other than Rock Band Guitar Hero, I'm awesome at. But no, but those Dark Souls, like every single Souls game that has come out, I go through the same process where I pick it up and I play it for like 10 hours and I never get past the first like 2 bosses and I give up and I'm very mad at it. And then a month, 2 months, 3 months later, I go, I never really played any of that game. I should give it another shot. And then I power through and actually like figure out how to play it and beat it. But every single like you'd think I would learn after Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3. I never played Dark Souls 2, but Bloodborne, every time I give up and go, I can't play this one. This one's too hard. And then 6 months later, I come back and like, oh, I get it now. Okay.
Man, it is super funny. Even I think like I did actually get to see a little bit of the PlayStation 5 reveal stuff. I didn't get to see it like when it was live when everybody else was watching it. But I guess like when we're talking about like standpoints or different games that are coming out, sometimes it's that same thing as I was talking about too. You only know so much with regards to the game if you're invested into their series, if you're aware of their music. There were a lot of games that I've never heard of for the first time either. So sometimes when they release those kinds of trailers, it's hard for us to judge, or it's hard for us to get enough intel with regards of like the music per se on how that's going to affect the rest of the gameplay. Because sometimes, I guess like maybe sometimes some trailers they overdo it, and then they create these high expectations, but then when you play the game, it's like, what happened? I don't.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not trying to relate things to like movie stuff, but it's actually really interesting. How many? Yeah, Colin, you bring up an interesting point. It's funny how many people that are deep into video game music that actually don't consider themselves gamers. Well, I guess like for me especially, I played a bunch of games growing up, but I don't know if I would consider myself a full-on gamer per se. It's just because of like I'm a musician. I'm a musician first. I'm not a gamer. First along those lines. There are some people I'm curious to know your point, 8-bit, whether if it's like if you were a gamer first before a musician, but I think we in our previous conversation it seemed like to me you were a musician first before a gamer.
Yeah, definitely. yeah, definitely musician first. I think a lot of musicians feel that way. I bet like music is kind of, if you're into it, it's kind of like your life, you know. So yeah, and especially like if you're a content creator, for lack of a better term, um, it takes so much time to make good stuff that you don't really have, like, I don't really have time to play lots of video games. I have to be very picky about what I play.
The commitment of being a content creator is real, where it's pretty much you have to fully invest your time and your life into what you love doing, and you can't necessarily do much else outside of that sometimes, where sometimes you'll have some free time, or if you treat it as like a 9 to 5 gig and you do, you know,
Sure.
your 9 to 5 hours of work every single day, even some days you have to work over that just to make sure you make the deadlines that you set for yourself, along those
Totally.
lines too. I know for me, it's like, you know, I'm streaming now 4 to 5 days a week, whereas you're putting out, you know, 2 videos every month, and you need to make sure you're doing everything you need to kind of get yourself in a better fitting position, so you can set yourself up for success.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah,
It's, you
have you?
gotta have a. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I interrupted
I was
you.
gonna say, it's, you have to have a. You're an entrepreneur, really, even if you're streaming or whatever, and it doesn't feel like you're starting a business. You are, you know. So you kind of have to have that entrepreneur mindset of however much work this takes to get off the ground. That's how much I got to put in.
No, I feel
So
that, man. I totes feel that. Have you actually had a chance to play any games as of recently?
recently, for whatever reason, I have just not been feeling playing new games, but I went back and started playing Thousand Year Door, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, which was one of my favorites
Ooh,
as a kid.
okay, yeah, the new Paper Mario I'm hyped for. That's
Yeah,
like
actually, me too.
that I'm super hyped for, cuz that,
I'm
man.
go no go ahead.
No, you go. No, you.
I was gonna say, I'm one of those super annoying people that played the Thousand Year Door when I was like 10, and then now I'm like, every other Paper Mario sucks. No new ones. The new ones ruined it. Blah, 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 blah. But this new one, and I have to just come into it. This new one looks cool. It's not going to be as good or the same as Thousand Year Door, and that's fun. So yeah, I'm playing through Thousand Year Door again, and it's
It's
just
even
as good
this.
as I
It's even the
remember.
same feeling for me. I played a bunch of Luigi's Mansion on GameCube growing up. That by far, outside of Mario Kart, was one of my favorite games. I even remember watching one of my sisters playing that almost all the time when we had a GameCube. And then I finally got Luigi's Mansion 3 for the Switch, and I was like, yes, you know, kind of finally.
Yeah.
I actually haven't had the chance to finish that game ever since I picked it up, and now it's like Paper Mario's coming out, so it's like, am I gonna actually be able to take the time to really work with that and continue that or whatnot? Man, it's fascinating and all that sort of stuff. That's cool though, man. That's super cool. And hey, any drum stuff you're practicing as of lately? Before we get out of here or whatnot.
Drum stuff that I'm practicing. I have a little kid, so it's hard to find times to play. You know, she sleeps like 15 hours a day, so that takes a big chunk of what I can practice. But I've been working on, you know, figuring out for some arrangements that I'm working on, figuring out drum parts for that stuff. Um, been working on really just kind of figuring out how to groove. It sounds dumb, but like, I would love to be the type of guy, cuz well, not to start 5 sentences without finishing any of them. When I used to play a lot, when that was like my, you know, I was going to be a drummer. Growing up, I was always super into like prog rock and very technical drum stuff. And so that was kind of where I was coming from, is like trying to play really fast and really intricate things. And it wasn't till like being in school, realizing the importance of like, you have to be able to play something very simple that you could play for 15 minutes and have it just feel great the whole time. You know what I mean? So when I do get a chance to practice, that's what I kind of like to work on, is like, you know, set a metronome, pick a groove, and just see if you can make it feel good, you know, which is a lot harder.
Dude, I think the funny thing for me too is like that's something I'm still trying to work on nowadays for playing for 16 years at this point. Yeah, I didn't actually really starting to really make something feel good didn't really click till I got out of school, or it didn't necessarily click till it was like junior year of college along those lines. So at that point, that was like I want to say of junior year of college, that was 2014. I started when I was 10. So I mean, like, man, I have to trace back a significant amount of time. It's fascinating because I also feel like there's certain things that we always kind of prioritize. At least when we're getting older, we start to mature and we start to find things that are like, okay, we should be doing more of this rather than playing paradiddle diddles as fast as you possibly can,
Right.
or playing whatever kind of lick that you think the kids are doing nowadays, instead of just
Yeah.
laying some good 4/4 time.
Well, that was my favorite thing in like 2013, 12. Whenever, like when Chris Dave started really blowing up and every young drummer wanted to be Chris Dave. I was one of those people because he's amazing. Like what he's doing
Yep,
is so cool. So no wonder everyone wants to be him. But then people will like take the, janky like Dillaby kind of thing and take the, trying to play in other time signatures over a different time signature, take all the complicated stuff and then do it in a way that feels bad. And you're like, the most impressive thing about what he's doing is that no matter what weird stuff he's doing, it's based on this foundation of like being able to play, these hip hop grooves perfectly where they just feel great. And he could play the same thing for 2-3 hours and it would feel great the entire time.
That's like I think one of the most serious challenges too, man. It's just like we'll never know. We'll never know. We'll never know when he decides he wants to get his internet together. I'm kidding.
Sorry.
You're good, bro. You're good, man. Hey, any final thoughts? Anything that you want to say or want to put out there in the cosmos that is this stream?
Well, thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. Yeah, I don't know. Nothing comes to mind.
Hey, man.
I had a great time.
You know what? I appreciate you deciding to hang out with us today, man. It's good to finally have a lengthy conversation with you. I know we've only, for those that are watching the stream currently, I've had the pleasure to meet 8-Bit Music Theory a few times at MagFest, at PAX East. And we've got to hear each other play drums wise and stuff like that. One of these days we definitely should try to plan out a jam or something. I think that'd be so much fun. But if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys go give him a sub on his YouTube page. If you haven't seen any of his content already, a fantastic dude. I'm excited to see what's in store for him for the future of his YouTube channel. And I think we should totally have him back on the DomCast another episode down the road to update and see how he's going on and stuff. So thank you again for being here, brother. I really appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Thank you. Anytime. I'll be back whenever you want.
Sounds like a plan, man. And I will hopefully see you real soon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, chat, thank you again for watching this episode of the DomCast, and we'll be back next time for episode 4. Until then, we'll see you guys in the next video. And cut! Cool.
Okay.
End scene. Drop the curtain. Pull the cord, chat. We're good. With under seven drops next time. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm sorry about that. I have no idea
Dude,
what was
no,
happening.
it's always funny, and I think I've told so many people on stream this too. I don't know what it is. Every single episode, I've always had technical issues between different guests. So you're not the only one. But
Okay,
you're
as
the
long as
first.
I'm
You're
not
the
alone.
first. You're the first with 7 dropouts on the call.
That's pretty bad.
It's all good, man. Thank you guys, and hey, for everybody watching currently, if you came over from 8-Bit Music Theory's YouTube channel, it's wonderful to have you guys joining on my stream. I really appreciate you guys deciding to come and hang out with us. It means a lot to have y'all here. I'm gonna be playing some requests for y'all in a little bit, actually. So 8-Bit, I'm gonna let you go if you wanna hang out and chill out some music, or if you got stuff you got to do. You do whichever you got to do, man. Thank you again for being here, brother. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds like a plan, man. All right, you have a good one.
Bye, chat. You were awesome. See ya.
And that's a wrap for episode 3 of DomCast.